Good morning. Welcome and thank you for participating today in our EdTalk. EdTalks are short educational webinars presented by the Continuing Education branch of Johnson County Community College. Continuing education courses enhance career development and deepen personal enrichment. Our continuing education program areas include business skills development, careers and trades, computer technology, healthcare, leisure, life skills, ESL and GED, small business development, and youth programs. Today's EdTalk will begin with an overview provided by our expert, who will then take questions at the end of the presentation. Questions can be entered via the Q&A panel on your screen at any point throughout the webinar. We're delighted to have Paula Douse with us today. Paula, the floor is yours.
All right, well, thank you very much, Nicholas. I am honored to be here, and I'm going to share with you some thoughts that can make a dramatic difference in your life, freeing yourself from your limiting beliefs. So, you bought a smartphone, and when you bought it, it came with some preloaded apps, right? The camera, there's an alarm, there's a timer, there's a system for playing music, and there's a few other goodies. Most importantly, it came with a pre-installed app store. And it wasn't very long before you were using that little program to download all kinds of other useful apps. And before you know it, the screen went from this to this. So that probably looks familiar to you. In fact, you probably have so many apps on your phone that it takes maybe 2 or 3 screens or maybe even more to see all of them. And if you're like me, you probably now have so many apps that you don't use anymore. They're just sitting in the background, burning up battery energy. So when you were born, you too were born with some apps. Some basic instincts, how to suck and how to cry. Later, how to experiment with balance so that you could walk, and how to decode this very complex skill of language. With every year that passed, you have added more apps to your system. With these apps in the form of beliefs, were downloaded from messages and lessons from your parents, teachers, coaches, the media, your church, and your community. And lots of these apps, these beliefs, have served you well, but some of them are outdated, and some of them just don't work very well in our current environment, and others were just not right to begin with. So it's time to do a little housekeeping. We want to have another look at these beliefs that have accumulated and determine which of these serve us well and which are limiting our happiness and growth. So it's time to adjust, delete, or replace some of these apps that are cluttering up our system. See, words matter, especially the words that you say to yourself about yourself. You have a constant stream of conversation going on in your head. And the words that are streaming through are influencing how you see your world, how you respond to events around you, and how happy or stressed you feel. The problem for most of us is that we are not very introspective. We don't pay a lot of attention to the thoughts that are coming and going. But even though we don't actively pay attention to these thoughts, they still have a really big influence on you. If we did pay attention, we would soon notice that most of these talks, most of these talks, the way we talk to ourselves, is negative, not positive. We tend to say very critical, pessimistic, or depressing things to ourselves. In fact, if others were to say those same things to us, we would be appalled. We tell ourselves that we're useless, we're a failure, we're not a nice person, and on and on. So much of our self-talk is negative, and there actually is a reason. we're wired to go to the dark side. So let me explain. Let's say you and some of your friends planned a camping weekend getaway, and you chose a state park that is 10 hours from home. And after weeks of decisions regarding menus, equipment, and activities, you set out early for that park. You drive all day, and you arrive at the park around dinner time, tired from the drive, but excited to finally be there. Vacation's about to start. So you go into the building to register for your campsite, and the ranger warns you that bears have been bothering some campers, and you need to follow some very specific instructions around food storage. And if you do, they probably won't bother you. So you figure, hotels aren't nearby. We came all this way. We might as well go ahead and set up camp. We'll follow those instructions. We'll be fine. So you head in and you find the most perfect campsite. There are trees all around, and there's a little spring not too far from your campsite. You can hear the bubbling and gurgling. This is just ideal. This is what you were hoping for. So you get your campsite all set up, you have a bite to eat, and by the time you get all of that done, dusk has set in. And so you set up a little campfire, and you're sitting around, you're drinking adult beverages, which would be coffee, of course, because that's what you drink around a campfire. That's what I'm told anyways. And you're chatting, and you're laughing, and you're having a good time. And then all of a sudden, out in the dark, you hear a kind of a crash, and then you hear something moving, something big. You can hear the crunching and the movement as this, whatever it is moving, and it's getting closer. So you know it's coming in your direction. So what do? Well, if you're human, you immediately are on your feet and you're looking around for something to protect yourself with, a weapon, a stick. You're also measuring the distance to the vehicle and wondering if you can outrun your campmates. And then just before you take off for the vehicle, out of the dark and into the campfire light steps a big, fat raccoon. And just as quickly as it steps into the light, it scurries off back into the dark. And you realize that's what you heard. Now, the question is, what did it cost you to assume that this event, this unexpected or unknown event, was dangerous when actually it was safe, it was benign? Well, you probably burnt a few extra calories, and for me, that would be a good thing. You also now have a really funny story to share, and you can point fingers at each other about how scared they looked, etc., because, of course, you weren't frightened. And it's fine. Well, let's just change that story slightly. You're still sitting around the campfire. You still hear that crash and you hear that movement, but you know you stored your food carefully. Then you turn to your campfire mates and say, it's fine. We're fine. And you continue to chat and sip on your adult beverage. And then out of the dark and into the campfire light steps a big black bear. What did it cost you to assume something was safe when actually it was quite dangerous? You see, survival depends on assuming the negative, assuming danger, assuming threat. Because when we do that, we give ourselves an opportunity to respond. And those few seconds can be all the difference. So you have a pre-wired app that is biased towards negative. And you also have a mind that is designed to talk to you constantly. Your default state is to be thinking all the time. A wandering mind is your normal state. But added to that, you are a time traveler. You might not have thought of it that way, but your mind wanders to the past and it mulls over your hurts and your mistakes. and it wanders to the future, worrying about what might be lurking out there. Most of your thoughts are in the past or in the future. And the thing is, while our mind is traveling, time traveling, your subconscious is listening to all of that conversation and taking note. You know, you have a conscious and subconscious brain, right? If I asked you for your mother's name, you could give it to me quite quickly. And yet, if it was not part of your conscious thinking. You retrieved it easily from that storehouse of information that you have that is completely out of your conscious thinking until it's requested. See, the subconscious brain has a wealth of information stored, and it's also where all your beliefs are stored. And it is your subconscious brain that is executing your apps, adding to, deleting, and adjusting your programs according to the messages that are streaming through your mind. And so here's the thing. We have been internalizing messages from our authority figures, and we've been doing it in our entire life. We have all kinds of beliefs running in the background that are influencing our decisions, our actions, our happiness, and it's doing all of this without our even knowing it. So this is where Hebb's law becomes relevant. According to Hebb's law, neurons that fire together, wire together. And the more often they fire together, the more tightly they become wired. The lessons we learned as children, when practiced over the years, become very strong programs in our head. So you want to think of it like crossing a meadow. The first time you do it, you just bend a few grass leaves. But if you keep doing it, you wear a path through the meadow. Continue doing it, and the path becomes wide and packed, and it now makes sense to always cross that meadow using the nice open path. After all, we are wired to take the path of least resistance, and this path that we have created is the easiest route across the meadow. And so these programs that we have set up in our head and practiced over the years, they become our go-to, our default way of thinking about things. But wait, there's more. Yeah. Let's talk about the reticular activating system. The RAS is a subcomponent of the most primitive part of our brain, the brainstem. And this little rascal is constantly filtering out non-essential stimuli. That prevents you from being overwhelmed by the constant onslaught of data that's being picked up by your five senses. And it allows you to focus on information that's most relevant to whatever program you're running at the moment. So there's a wealth of information available to us, but your RAS only allows a small portion of that information to reach your conscious awareness. The information that is allowed through the funnel is the information that helps you run your programs or apps most efficiently. It's the information that supports and confirms our beliefs. So our thoughts color our experience. And that becomes important because we have these accumulated beliefs that are either helping us, they support us toward our goals, or they can cause misery. So Albert Ellis worked with hundreds of patients, and he identified 12 common beliefs that, if allowed to become entrenched, will limit our happiness and growth. So there's very good advice from the Greek sage Socrates. He says, everything in moderation, nothing in excess. And that really is good advice when we're talking about these beliefs. The Yerkes-Dodson curve helps us to understand that if we don't hold any of these beliefs, we're going to be very complacent. We're unlikely to put a lot of effort into anything. If we reach the middle ground, these beliefs can actually push us towards quality outcomes. But if the belief becomes too strongly held and rigidly enforced, well, it'll tip over and become counterproductive. It can even paralyze our action, and it will create misery. So when a belief is too tightly held or rigidly applied, it can cause harm to our emotional well-being, our physical body, and more recent research tells us that it can even modify our genes. Wow. So what are these 12 beliefs? We're going to take a walk through them now. And I will share with you the belief, and then I'll tell you what the good side of it is if it's in that middle ground, and then what damage it can cause. As I walk through these, you're going to recognize some of these. You're going to realize that, yeah, you probably hold some of these beliefs, and that's okay. It's how deeply held those beliefs are that make the difference. So here's the first one. I absolutely need love and approval from all those significant to me, and I must avoid disapproval from any source. So the good on that is, I will do things that will please the folks that matter to me, and I'll avoid doing things that they don't want me to do. That's a great thing. We spend a long time teaching our children that. But when it becomes too deeply entrenched, it means that we're going to sacrifice our own needs to please the people who matter to us. I'll focus on being a people pleaser, and I'll steadfastly avoid doing anything that might create disapproval, even if I really want to do it or I really need to do it. And that's not a good thing. So here's the second belief. To be a worthwhile person, I must be thoroughly competent, adequate, and achieving in all respects. Again, here's the upside to that one. I'll invest time in producing valued outcomes, and I'll check my work to ensure there are no obvious gaps or mistakes. That is just a good employee. The bad, I'll only take on projects I know I can excel at and avoid risky projects or stretch projects. The projects I do take on, I'll spend an inordinate amount of time ensuring that I execute it with perfection. As a result, I don't get a lot done. Number 3, some people are bad, wicked, or villainous, and they should be blamed and punished for their villainy. So the good on that one is I'll pay attention to the rules and expectation, and I'll avoid breaking laws and encourage others to do the same. The bad, I'll be very upset when anyone else breaks a rule or doesn't meet an expectation, and I will advocate for severe punishment for their terrible transgression. And I won't affiliate with anyone I believe who is a rule breaker. Number 4, things must be the way I want them to be, otherwise life is going to be intolerable. And the good is I'll be clear about how I want things to be and work at influencing others to cooperate with my vision. That's cool. That's leadership. The bad, I'll insist that things are the way I want them to be without considering any other options, and I'll even resort to coercive tactics, if necessary, to make my vision happen. And if that doesn't work, I'll withdraw and sulk. I'll take my ball and go home. Number 5, my unhappiness is caused by things which are outside of my control. So there's little I can do to feel better. The upside, I'll accept that, in life, there's going to be some ups and downs. There's going to be things I don't like. And I'll focus on, I'll focus on those things that I can control. The bad, I'll just give up trying to move forward on anything, because in the end, it won't make any difference. I'm doomed to be unhappy. Number 6, if something is or might be dangerous or fearsome, I should be terribly concerned about the possibility of it happening. I should worry about it constantly. I should have it on the top of my mind. I should be thinking about it all the time. I have embellished that, I understand. So the good, there are things that could harm me, so I'll pay attention and take proactive steps to protect myself. Very appropriate. The bad, there are things that could harm me, so I should spend most of my energy focused on worrying about those things. I should avoid even the slightest possibility of being in harm's way. 7, I could be happier by avoiding life's difficulties, unpleasantness, and responsibilities. Before taking something on, I'll look to be sure that I can manage it. And if there is a possibility, there needs to be a possibility of personal benefit before I take it on. The bad, I should avoid all responsibilities and do as little as possible for myself or others. 8, I must depend on others and rely on someone stronger than myself. So the good would be, collaborating with others is going to improve my results. Being a good team player means allowing others to take the lead when they have better skills or knowledge, and that's all cool. But the bad, I should never take the lead on anything. I need others to make things happen. 9, my past determines my present behavior because something once strongly affected my life. It's going to continue to influence my feelings and behavior. And the good is I can use my past to create my future. Lessons learned will guide me toward a better future. But the bad is I am who I am. Nothing's going to change. My past can't be changed, and it limits the choices I have. I need to adjust. I need to just accept that my future is going to be just a continuation of my past. Number 10, I should become upset when other people have problems and feel unhappy when they're sad. I can empathize with others, and when appropriate, I can help them to solve their problems. But the bad is when I take on everybody else's problems as though they were my problem, and I start to see it as my responsibility to solve these problems. And if I don't give them my entire effort, even if it causes me harm, I'm just not a good person. Number 11, I shouldn't have to feel discomfort and pain, and I should avoid them at all costs. Well, pain and discomfort are a signal for me to make a change in my life, and I can take action to reduce pain and discomfort. But the bad, if I think that I shouldn't ever have to experience pain or discomfort, then I'll also think that I should avoid anything that will cause any physical or emotional pain. And if I can't avoid it, demand a medical or emotional intervention to immediately relieve the pain or discomfort. By the way, this is one that will lead to addictions easily. Number 12, there's a right, precise, and perfect solution to human problems, and it's awful if this perfect solution is not found. And the good on that one is, it's good to put effort into finding a workable solution to problems that you encounter. That's a great thing. The bad is when any solution or action must be perfect before you will put it into place, that you will not settle for anything less than absolute perfection. And you're going to continue to work until you get to that perfect solution or action. That's called obsessive. And it's called perfectionism. And both are going to contribute to severe misery because perfection is not possible. So, want to know if you have a limiting belief that's holding you back? I'm guessing that as we walk through these beliefs, at least one resonated with you. Most people notice that they actually hold several of these beliefs. But remember the Yerkes-Dodson curve. Holding the belief in moderation can actually spur you forward and be helpful. See, I know that I hold the belief that to be a worthwhile person, I have to be thoroughly competent, adequate, and achieving in all respects. And that has pushed me to take on projects, challenging projects, and to really work at doing them well. And that's a good thing. That's helped me achieve some things in my life that I am very proud of. But how do you know if your belief is helping you or getting in your way? Well, here's some good news for you. There is an assessment that you can take and you can find out. The assessment is at www.docpaula.com/take control. It's free. So if you have the time, it is fairly lengthy. It's going to take you about 20 minutes to work your way through, but it really is worthwhile in understanding where do you fall on that continuum. Are you in that mid zone? Is it helping you? Is it contributing? Is it moving you forward? Or is it getting in your way? Is it stopping you? So once you know what beliefs you're holding, if there is one that is tipping over, that is moving toward that paralyzing misery side, well, what can you do? If there's something at the upper end of the scale, you can take back control. You don't have to let it continue to cause misery or limit your growth. So how do you do that? Yeah, you dispute it. You create a dispute statement. So, for example, if your statement is, I absolutely need love and approval from all those significant to me, and I must avoid disapproval from any source, a dispute statement might look something like, as long as the people who are most important to me love me, I don't need anyone else's approval. It's impossible for everyone to approve and love me. So as long as I know I'm putting my best effort in the things I do, that's enough. So for every one of these statements, you can access some sample dispute statements. So if you take the assessment, at the very last page, there's a button that will allow you to print your assessment. But below that is a button that will take you back to the very first page that you found yourself on, that landing page. And there are a number of links there with resources that will help you with all of this. One of those resources is a job aid that will give you a couple of sample dispute statements for each of the 12 limiting beliefs. Now, understand these are samples only. You can use them as a starting point, but it is important that your disputing statement makes sense to you. So you'll probably need to edit these statements or maybe even write a completely different one, but they will give you a starting point. So if you need help writing a dispute statement, there's also a link on that resource page that you can, if you click on that, it'll bring you to a calendar and you can schedule a free 30-minute introductory session with me. And I'll help you write your dispute statement, something that makes sense for you. So once you have your dispute statement, what are you going to do with it? Well, it won't do you any good to just write it. You have to practice it. Remember that crossing the meadow, that creating those linkages? We have to create a strong enough path that becomes our go-to route through the meadow. The nice thing about the brain is when we stop using a program, it deletes it, it cleans it up, it snips it away. So what we want to do is to create a path that we use often enough that it becomes the go-to path and the old, more negative one gets trimmed or adjusted. So we're almost literally overwriting the old belief with the new one. You want to think of it as saving over an old file. But in this case, it won't happen with just one click. It does require repetition. So you can create repetition by reading your dispute statement to yourself, 3 times a day: breakfast, lunch, supper, morning, midday, before you go to bed, whatever. And that will work. But you could speed up that process by using some self-hypnosis. It's like, you want to take I-70 if you're going to Topeka, or do you want to take 40 highway? 40 highway is a lot slower. There's some pretty tight curves. It can be a little bit dangerous. And if you're not paying attention, you could get off course. So I-70 to me makes sense. So does self-hypnosis. So how do you do that? Well, here are some very simple steps. You find a comfortable place. You focus your eyes on a spot on the wall. You take a deep breath. Then squeeze your fists tight and count to 3. Release your fists. Take another deep breath. Repeat that 4 or 5 times. Then read your dispute statement to yourself 3 times in a row. And take 1 more deep breath. And return to your normal activities. This whole thing won't take more than 3 or 4 minutes. You can do this by yourself, or you can download a recording that is on that resource page, the same resource page that you found the job aid and that you found the link to book a session with me. You will find there a recording that will guide you through these steps. So you can put it on your smartphone and you can listen to it. Just close your eyes and listen to it. Make sure you have your dispute statement handy so that you can read it to yourself. And if you do this, you begin doing this, within a few days, you're going to start noticing that things are changing. And you're going to see opportunities and small changes emerging. And that's exciting. So how does this work? How does this self-hypnosis routine work? Well, when we're stressed, our brain is working at the top end of the beta range, somewhere between 28 and 32 hertz per second. And at this level, we're processing very quickly, but not necessarily effectively. We might be jumping from one thought to another and not completing anything. When we use a self-hypnosis script like the one I have provided, we are literally slowing our brain speed down. We're dropping to the low end of the beta range, almost to alpha. Now, when we're in alpha, we're in our most creative self. We're accessing all of that stored information in our subconscious. So we're in a good spot for really thinking about things differently, seeing things in a slightly different perspective. The problem is that when we're in alpha, we're not taking action. So the border between alpha and beta is where we can be alert, but also creative. So this is where our best problem solving can occur. And so when we use a self-hypnosis script like the one that I provided for you, well, we get the benefit of both sides. And it is like taking I-70 to Topeka. So we all have beliefs and assumptions. It's your choice whether they are a positive force in your life or they're causing you misery. And so my advice to you is choose wisely. If you missed the link for where that assessment is, here it is again, docpaula.com/take control. That'll get you there. That'll get you the assessment. When you have some time, go ahead and take that assessment. It's really worth your effort. So I would really love it if you would join my Facebook group. This is obviously, it's free, but Understanding and Resolving Conflict at Work. We have there's literally hundreds of folks on that site, and I try to put some quality information out there for you. Something just went wrong. Yeah, no, I did not want to do that. I apparently went to the site I'm going to close that out and go back here. I also want to make you aware of my books that you can access on Amazon. This one here, I think we're going to change the title on that one a little bit, and it will be available in September. But surprise, I have a special gift for you. I just published a book called The 10 Best Practices for Managing Remote Workers, and I'm going to give this away to you for free. You can download your copy today. If you go to this website right here, docpaula.com/remote_worker, and you can have that copy today. So just take a minute to record that, and we're going to go to Q&A. So if you need to reach me, you can reach me at www.behaviortransitions.com or drpaula@behaviortransitions.com. And so I am going to turn it over to question and answers. And Nicholas, if you're there.
Yes.
Do we have any questions in the chat box?
Not yet, but while we wait for questions, thank you again, Paula. That was a great presentation. And I just want to let everyone in the audience know that, as always, this presentation, the recording, will be available afterward per request. And if you need the recording or any of Paula's previous presentations or any of those links that were mentioned, you can go ahead and email edtalks@jccc.edu, and we can get any of that information to you.
All righty.
Okay, got a question coming in here. Someone wants to know if you could go back and show the site for the book download.
Yeah, there it is. And I'll just leave that up, because I would really like for you to download that book. It's a quick read. It's only 60 pages. Obviously, if you'd like the pretty binding, you can go to Amazon and purchase it, and it's very inexpensive. I priced it so that people will be encouraged to access it, but you don't have to. You can download it and get the content on the PDF. It's also available in ebook, but again, you have access to the PDF.
All right, thank you. And we have a question here. It says, I remember during my career as a nurse, we had a pain scale to ask patients as to where their pain levels were. The idea was to be near zero. That meant I gave a lot of drugs around the clock. That began the drug revolution for pain to be zero. The drug companies made up the cute little scale to use. I see what you mean, and it is true. Life does not allow us zero pain and suffering.
You know, one of my mentors, he says all the time, you can have pain, but you don't have to suffer. So pain is a part of life, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have to suffer. It's a matter of how we approach things. So I wrote this book while I was on medical leave. I'd had knee surgery, and honestly, it was pretty painful. But I threw away my meds within 24 hours. I didn't want those painkillers. And instead, I recognized, okay, there's going to be discomfort, there is pain, but I can direct my thoughts elsewhere. And as I do that, the pain, I feel it less. I'm not bothered by it as much. And so I literally wrote this book as a way of coping with the discomfort in my knee. Again, we're going to have pain. We're going to have some discomfort. You know what? It's part of the growth process. And in many ways, it makes life sweeter when we overcome, when we get past these moments. And so we don't want to eliminate all pain. What we want is to use it to help us move forward.
Thank you. Okay, another question. Do you have any tweaks for someone on the Asperger's side?
I have had the opportunity to work with folks with Asperger's, actually on the full, all different types. You know, there's an old saying, if you work with someone with it, one person with autism, you've worked with one person with autism, because everybody is a little different. And so when we talk about tweaking around Asperger's syndrome, I would be reluctant to just throw out a tip just like that, because it's so unique to every single individual. But yes, I do have tools. I can help folks be their best version of themselves and to use their Asperger's to their benefit, as opposed to being something that is getting in their way. Asperger's folks with on that autism spectrum, they struggle a lot with anxiety. And when we can help them, give them tools to deal with that anxiety, some really wonderful things happen.
Thank you. Could you go back to, you don't have to go back to the slide, but just kind of revisit that self-hypnosis method? I never heard that term before.
I think I will go back, because I think it's worth. Now, the one thing I'm going to tell you is that later this morning, I'm going to upload a recording that really will walk you through all of these steps, so that you could download it on your phone and you don't have to memorize what do I do next. You just listen to me talk to you. And the other thing I will do is add a binaural soundtrack underneath it, which is very calming, and it helps to balance the brain as you're going through this. So it's all about putting your brain in the best place, moving it down to that boundary between alpha and beta, so that you are best able to integrate this new dispute statement and gradually overwrite the older message, so that this becomes your go-to way of thinking.
In your experience, do you think this is something that would be more effective in the morning or at night, or perhaps taking a break in the middle of the day, or does it not really matter what time?
That's a great question, Nicholas. My first answer is any time is a good time. But if there is a best time, the best time is before you go to sleep at night. And the reason for that is because, as you know, when you're sleeping, your brain is not resting. In fact, it's at its most active level, basically processing, organizing, categorizing, doing all kinds of reprogramming during the night. So if you do this right before you go to sleep, you are leaving a message with your subconscious around what it is, what it could be working on. And so it does work even better if you do it right before you go to bed at night.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I know you gave that smartphone analogy at the beginning. I know I personally am guilty of being on my phone right up until I go to sleep. So that's probably not the best thing. Probably better to do a little bit of meditation.
Yeah, exactly. I will tell you that if you were to use this program right before you go to sleep, chances are you're going to sleep better.
Absolutely. Okay. Looks like we don't have any more questions unless one comes in right at the end. Would you advance to that final slide for me? And if you had any other closing remarks you wanted to make.
I think I've had my share of comments. I really appreciate this opportunity to share some things with folks, and I really hope folks will take that assessment and that they'll download that book, because it really it matters to me in terms of having an impact, that people's lives are better as a result of my sharing something with them. So that's my last word, and you can finish it off here, Nicholas.
All right, I will. We did just get one more question just now, so I'll send that your way. It is, I have developed a fear of driving on the major highways. I am a risk due to anxiety to others and to myself due to my high anxiety. Does your self-hypnosis work there too?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. You can create a dispute statement, to the belief that driving is dangerous, You can create an opposite statement to that. I'd be happy to help you with that. If you go to behaviortransitions.com, you could click and book 30 minutes with me, and I'd help you write that dispute statement. And then if you follow the same process and keep repeating it, you will see a difference. It will get better. You will be more comfortable behind the wheel.
Thank you again. Thank you for answering all those questions and the presentation. And thank you all for joining us today after our little extended break over the holidays. Good to have you all back. And we hope you can join us again next week on Tuesday, July 20th at 10 a.m. for our newest Ed Talk, How to Create a Resume That Gets Attention, with our speaker, Diana All. All right. Hope everyone has a good weekend.